A lot of people in life find fulfillment in achievement. They find fulfillment in the money in the bank account. They find fulfillment in the cars, the success. And what I'm going to say doesn't sound sexy or exciting, but I believe it's a path to mastery, which is finding the fulfillment and joy in nothing, finding the fulfillment and joy in sitting in a resting state. Peace and solitude and fulfillment and nothing, in my opinion, is such an important practice to truly find peace. I could lose it all right now and I would be great. I'd be like, well, that was what was supposed to happen. I'm grateful for that. And as soon as you detach from the outcome, you have all the power. I own and operate a healthcare firm. We have over 600 employees. We have 7 programs in 5 states here in the United States. That is exactly the path that I've taken, how I've built a 9-figure business, why I speak in front of 10,000 people, because I can influence how they're feeling in a positive way, because I've strengthened that muscle, doing the right thing, even though it's difficult.
What if the very pain you've been running from was the key to your freedom? Today's guest, Ryan Zofay, knows this firsthand. From being pronounced dead at the scene of a car accident to building a 9-figure business and transforming thousands of lives, Ryan's story is proof that rock bottom can be the doorway to an entirely new life. In this episode, he reveals why feeling your emotions, not avoiding them, is the secret to healing, how unconscious childhood programming silently runs your adult life, and the one mindset shift that can break any self-sabotaging pattern for good. Because sometimes the breakdown isn't the end of your story, it's the moment your real life finally begins. Enjoy. Well, hello, beautiful souls. We have another amazing guest for you. We have what would I say? The best word is the word that comes to mind is spectacular. Ryan Zofay, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Catherine, for having me.
I couldn't think of a word. It had to be really like, but even the word
Really
spectacular
big.
doesn't come to it. Doesn't even sit with it. Anyway, the way that we love to start the show, Ryan, is we always love to ask our guest, what inspired you to do what you do today?
I think when one goes through a tremendous amount of suffering, you find a way out of it. And through my journey of healing, I found that the gift of living is giving. And it's been such a challenge for me because, my parents, they did the best that they could, but their methods of teaching me were very painful. And so when I think about like feeling justified or feeling entitled, like the world owed me something, that was a lot of how I showed up in life. And as soon as I was able to experience some relief through that, I was like, oh my God, like this feels so good. Like I feel free. And then I wanted to teach other people they could too have this freedom.
So maybe for those that don't know you, what exactly do you do?
Yeah, so I am a thought leader. I am a transformational speaker. I facilitate high level um, in-person, total immersion events. I also am an entrepreneur. I own and operate a healthcare firm. We have over 600 employees. We have 7 programs in 5 states here in the United States.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So, what was that turning point for you? Because you were talking about your life experience, but what was that turning point for you? Because obviously you went through your own hardship, your own pain. What was that, or even a breaking point for you?
Sure. And I think it's interesting where I've gotten to now in my life is that I've developed a practice to constantly assess what's going on in my life. What are some adjustments that I can make? So I've had many breaking points. I've had many moments where I've had shifts. And I think that's the practice. And I believe that's the mastery because as soon as you think that life is a destination, you're missing out on so much. And so I've realized and recognized that it's all about a journey and it's all about constant improvement and really just self-reflection and identifying what's going on. But like my first like real major event in my life that propelled me here was October 8th, 2001, when I was in an automobile accident. I was running from the police. I was up all weekend using drugs and alcohol. I was afraid if I got arrested, I was going to spend, 25 to life in prison because that's what they told me the last time I was there. And I flipped a car and I was pronounced dead at the scene. And I woke up and clearly God had a different plan for me, yet I was still facing 25 to life. And so that was like the big, big moment for me.
I'm curious what happened.
Well, I was already in and out of juvie for 2 years. My mother was a drug user. My father was an alcoholic. And so a lot of the mischief came from my mom. She wanted drugs and she knew I was a way for her to get those drugs. So I was a criminal. I would do things to to give her money, and I started to adopt behaviors that I'm not proud of, and I didn't feel good doing it, but it's my mom, so I didn't know any better. And all that stuff caught up to me, and that was when I was in the automobile accident. And at this point, I haven't seen my mom in several years. And so yeah, so it was an interesting time in my life for sure.
Thank you for your vulnerability. I'll just leave it there. I think that that is a tough thing, but isn't it interesting? Like I've obviously have spoken to thousands of people over the years, and there's always that it's always that some form of hardship that we go through that propels us forward to, and not for everybody, but it's always to propel them forward to do what you do today, right? Because I mean, you speak in front of thousands of people and you help people level up, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. But it took you to go through that experience for you to be where you are today. So, did you have a guru, a mentor, or is this all self? Like you did all this work yourself?
Yeah, so I feel like, God put people on my path when it was necessary for me to learn that lesson. And I think, you hear people say all the time when the student's ready, the teacher appears. And so through my journey of life, I was ready for that mentor at that time to teach me that lesson that I needed to learn to propel me forward. And so my first real big mentor was my sponsor, Rev Dave Hott is his name. He was in a part of the 12-step program, Alcoholics Anonymous, and he was my first sponsor that really helped me get me back to living a normal, functional life. And so he was instrumental in my sobriety and why I am the man I am today.
And so, from those lessons, you've obviously continued this journey because we were talking about before we came on the show about, it's a practice, right? It's a daily practice. And I was asking you, like, do you ever have triggers? Do you ever have your down days, right? Just to check in that you're human. So, which, I even get asked all the time. People think that because of the work that I do, that I don't have, I've got all my shit together. And no, it's a constant work. But I think also for you, you've had a great teacher. But how do you keep going? That's the thing. Like, we have teachers, we have mentors that cross our paths. But how do you, because I know people that continue looking for teachers and mentors because they're constantly feeling stuck, but you seem to just keep on going. You're seeing life in what you were saying too, like life is a journey, not a destination. So
It's
what's
so
your
true.
trick?
Well, I mean, I think the light illuminates as you start to go down the path. And so once you're exposed to something, you can't be unexposed unless you choose to be unexposed. And that's what most people in society do. There's 98% of society that just stays in the norm, stays in their automatic program, They stay in what they know is safe. And once I've been exposed that you can experience life from a completely different perspective, I personally have decided that I'm not going back. There's not that I would rather live in the unknown and be afraid than to stay stuck in the known and know where that's going to get me, because I've been there so many times and it's miserable. And so we talked about going through hardship and challenges. I believe that in order to truly feel an extraordinary life, you have to go through pain and suffering to know what it looks like to experience that excitement, to experience that freedom. Because the only thing I can say is yeah, from the external world, it looked like I was imprisoned. The family that I was with, they didn't do such a great job at teaching me skills, but the real imprisonment was how I was feeling internally, what was going on inside. And so once I understood that there's a path to break out of that prison, it doesn't matter where you're at, you can create and generate the feelings and emotions inside, regardless what environment you're in. And so once I learned that skill, I'm like, why would I ever want to stop? Because it just keeps getting better. I keep experiencing a little bit more joy. I keep experiencing a little bit more peace. And most people don't know that that is available to them. And I've been exposed to that. And I'm like, there's no reason to stop.
You just reminded me of Nelson Mandela, because he talks about, remember when he was in prison, that was a long time ago, but his mantra was, I'll never get out of here, I'll never get out of here. And then he flipped the switch by, what if one day I do get out of here? And just shifting his mindset, like you say, it didn't matter what environment you're in, but shifting that mindset was able to help him. What if I do get out of here? And then for him to plan what that looked like for him, and obviously got out and he was, doing what he was doing. So really, it's not, the environment doesn't really condition us. Because a lot of people say, I'm conditioned by my environment, I'm conditioned by my relationship. But you're saying we don't have to be conditioned by that. We can choose not to be conditioned by our environment, correct?
I think the key piece that you just mentioned is choice, right? I do believe in the formative years of our life that our environment does condition us. And that's what we know. The model of our world, our belief systems, how we respond, how we react is based on the household that we grew up in. Our caretakers are responsible to teach us that. But in order for you to change your environment, you have to change from the inside out. Your personality has to change in order for you to change your personal reality. And I have evidence of that because I grew up with parents that were drug addicts and alcoholics, and I hung out with kids on the street that were drug addicts and alcoholics. And then when I got sober, one of the first things that they told me was that, Ryan, you have to change people, places, and things. But that started from an internal shift. I wanted to be different internally. I wanted to change how I was feeling, how I was showing up in the world. And I started to recognize what was going on around me. And I was like, this isn't what I want. This isn't conducive to who I'm being inside. And so that's been my experience with it.
Yeah, yeah. And it goes back to what Jim Rohn says, we are the average of the 5 people we hang out with, right? We get
Sure,
influenced by them.
sure.
Yeah.
And that's one of the most challenging pieces is to be strong enough to influence those around you, because most people are influenced by the people that they're around. And that was the skill that I needed to learn so that I can create the life that I have today, which was the power of influence, which is the power of inspiration, the power of transformation. And once I mastered that skill, my life just took off to the next level.
To master that skill though, Ryan, I'm just thinking there's also some pain associated. We were talking about pain before, because for you to become an influencer, for you to move away from some of the people you've been around with for many, many years that no longer resonate with you, because I believe that when you go through that inner shift, your vibrational frequency increases, it rises. And so it takes a lot of courage also to say, I'm going to stand on my own, or I'm moving away from my pack that I've been around for the last 20 odd years. So, what's that internal driver that you or anyone that's listening to this connect with to be able to move away from even relationships
Mm.
or environments that are not conducing to them, like a job or a career? How do you start,
Yeah,
because it is very internally driven. How do you do that?
sure. So, there's something that I say that I think is so powerful. You will never be consistent with anything that is inconsistent with your unconscious program. And so when you think of that concept, for example, your unconscious program is an automatic response. It's the conditioning of our environment. It's the conditioning to the life that we're currently living. And so your head and your gut aren't aligned. And so I'm sure there's so many people that have been in a relationship where they're like, I know I need to get out of this relationship, but then their gut, their body won't let them. So your head and your mind are not aligned, right? That's the unconscious program. You're like, hey, I need a new career, but then you stay stuck because your unconscious program isn't allowing you to shift. And so one of the most powerful lessons that I learned in my life was when you can overcome that unconscious bias, you are developing your character. And that's when I recognize who you're becoming is the most important principle in life. Like who I'm chasing, my future self, right? Like who am I becoming? I My mom abused me, my dad abused me multiple times. I was taken advantage of, I was manipulated, I was hurt hundreds of times, bullied by kids. I can't change that. But what I can change is how I respond to those situations. And that was one of the most powerful lessons that I learned because life is going to show up, problems are going to happen, but how I respond to those problems are the only thing that I can truly control. And once you develop that level of character, once you develop that level of 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 perseverance, you literally are in control of everything in life. You literally have mastered something that very few people can master. You talked about Nelson Mandela. He has every right to feel entitled and to feel justified on how, if he decided to get out and have hate, but he didn't. He got out and he used that to change the world. And I think that's what everybody has the opportunity to do. They just don't recognize what's happening in the time that it's happening.
Yeah. But also in even doing that, that takes a lot of like you were saying, it takes a lot of work, right? Because for us even being aware of our unconscious patterns or programs that are automatic, uh, for us to do that, there's got to be a moment of presence, right? Living in the present moment, but being aware of them and then going against what your body is telling you, because your body is your unconscious, right? It's saying, no, don't leave it. But that because we resist change anyways, but it's better for you to move. But so you're going against your own physical biology almost, right? You're going against it because it's telling you, no, 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 stay here because it's more comfortable here because you feel safe, better the devil you know, right? So for those people that are in those situations, what's one bit of advice that you would give to them? Just one step, one first step to start moving away from that, those unconscious patterns.
Yeah, and so it's interesting. We're talking about like cognitive thoughts, emotional feelings, and then physical responses, right? And I think we all have it's the science, it's the psychology of our mind and body. And so understanding like concept is like I understand the concept of love, but until you actually experience the feeling of love, there's a separation. I think that's the problem is people know in their mind, they're like, oh, I know this, I know what I need to do, but they're unwilling to feel the feelings, and that's what they're running from. And you have to feel it to heal it. You have to go through those emotions to then change your physical experience. And I think that's where people fall short is they avoid or they escape the emotions. They don't want to feel the feelings of insecurity. They don't want to feel the feelings of pain or suffering. So they avoid it and they drink alcohol, they gamble, they cheat, they work a lot, they do everything they possibly can not to feel. And so thank God my mentors taught me what experiential work is all about, and feeling the feelings are the only way that you're going to get through the things that you want to get through. And that is a practice that I've now developed. And that's why I teach it, because if you're not feeling it, then you're clearly avoiding it and you're running away from it and you're never going to get to where you want to be. And that's why they say the biggest battle you're going to go through in life is your internal battle. And it's between your head and your heart. And your heart lives in your body and your emotions. And once you can express those emotions, you can feel the feelings of transformation. You can feel the feelings of growth. And then you start to build that muscle, and then it becomes a new automatic response. And then next thing you know, you're in control of how you feel, which is ultimately what life is all about.
Yeah, but it's not easy for everybody to feel the feelings because some people hold back from being vulnerable and feeling the feelings because I don't know what might come up, or I don't want to deal with that at the moment, because we were talking about the difference between pain and suffering. I mean, you've obviously gone through a lot of pain, but where you're at today, you're choosing not to hang on to those narratives. So you're not suffering. We were talking about before, like the triggers. If we hang on to them, then it's a choice that we choose to suffer through those. But
Sure,
for
sure.
you, so you understand what took place. There's obviously a level of forgiveness. You have gone through a process for you to be where you are today from your past. Is it a forgiveness practice that got you feel your feelings, not being angry with the world, not being, but actually be in pure love?
Sure. And so I think it's interesting what you just said, right? So like forgiveness is the symptom. The unconditional love and the emotional release is where the cause is, right? The void is built, right? So growing up, we have our caretakers and they're responsible to teach us how to express ourselves and how to navigate through life emotionally. And when you don't have that, it doesn't make sense to you to express your feelings, and it's unsafe. The unconscious mind is doing its job. Its job is to keep you safe. So it's like, hey, we've never felt this before. We're not going over there. That's scary as heck. Heck no. But really what you're doing is you're just avoiding the experience of life, which is the feelings of life. The feelings are the end result. The emotion is the end result of anything that we do in life, right? Your thoughts create your choices. Your choices create your behaviors. Behaviors create your experiences create your emotional state. So if you're avoiding your emotional state, you're avoiding the booby prize. You're avoiding the cherry on the top. You're avoiding the icing on the cake. And so the more we can teach people how to express their emotions and feel the feelings, then they are living. Then they're really experiencing what life has in store for us. And that has been what I've been up to for the last 24 years, is figuring out how to master how I feel.
I love that. Absolutely love that. And we've got, and I think you and I spoke about it before. We've got a positive psychology coaching academy, and I can't tell you how many people cannot articulate what they feel. We have a thing called the feeling wheel, with all the
Yeah.
feelings for them to actually put their a word to it, because they can't even articulate what they feel. And automatically, because we've been taught, if we feel a certain way, well, I'm really pissed off or I'm really angry. But when you really unpack it, it's frustration. It's not as heavy. But when it's always the meaning we give a situation is how we experience it. So
you know, it's
how did
it's
you
funny
do
you
it?
said it. Yeah, no, I think it's great what you're saying, because it's I think I think the lesson is that most people are feeling something and they think they shouldn't feel it. And they think that they don't want to feel it. Like, wait, I'm feeling this and I don't want to feel this. And then they start to think that there's something wrong with them because they're feeling something they don't want to feel. And I think that's where the integration comes in, right? It's like when the feeling of pain comes up, like it's supposed to feel that way. The feeling of happiness comes up, it's supposed to feel that way. The feeling of insecurity comes up, it's supposed to feel that way. It's supposed to feel discomfortable, uncomfortable. But I think once you can feel the feelings and be present in those feelings, the feeling passes. It moves through, and that's where we say, like, if you feel it, you heal it. And I think it's so powerful because it's something so basic we do in our seminars too. We give people the feeling wheel, and we're like, just check in and tell us how you're feeling right now. And just the level of awareness and insight that you see people that are like, oh wow, I am feeling this. Oh wow, I'm feeling this, and it's like they've never felt it before. It's so crazy, but that is actually, I believe, the mastery of life, because once you can master how you feel, you can literally master any situation.
And I always say that our thought is the spark, and the feeling is magnetic. So it almost like when we can start getting, and you're saying like allow those feelings to pass through is the quickest way to heal it. But then we become even more magnetic. You were talking about being uncomfortable, and you're very successful. So, and you were talking about you had to get comfortable with the change, right? Because you weren't happy with your environment, with the people, and so forth. So, you had to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? So, and I work with a lot of leaders, thousands of leaders over the years, and I've seen that pattern. I've seen that high performing individuals look at the moment they feel composed, they look at how can I shift that? Like they're looking at how can I make myself feel uncomfortable? So is that a bit of a thing that you do? You're constantly looking for, if you feel complacent, you're always looking for change, because that is how we grow, right? That's how we shift and change and move out of those unconscious patterns.
Sure. And so you're going to experience pain in two scenarios. You're going to experience pain and staying the same, or you're going to experience pain for growing. So pick which pain you want to have, because it's going to happen either way. Because everybody that we're talking to that is somebody that we want to help, they're experiencing pain because they're not growing. They're experiencing pain because they're not getting to where they want to be. They're experiencing pain because they're not having the relationship they want to have. They're experiencing pain because they're not making the money that they want to make. Okay, great. You're experiencing that pain. Why don't you try a new pain? Because that new pain actually gets you somewhere to where you can have some relief. You can actually have some progress. And then you start to feel good with the work that you have done. Because eventually, from my experience, the pain, just like going to the gym, right? Like sometimes running 5 miles doesn't feel good, but as soon as you're done with the race, you're like, oh my God, thank God I did that. So the satisfaction, the endorphins that are being released in your mind and your body chemically happens after you put in the work. And so I just understood this earlier on in life. It's like, okay, I can feel the pain of sitting stuck, or I can feel the pain of growing. And actually, the pain of growing is significantly more rewarding. And then I'm like, well, this is amazing. I'm just going to keep doing this. And that's the pursuit that I've taken.
So pain is inevitable. You're going to feel it anyway. You might as well do it, but then it's a choice on how you go about it.
For
Yeah.
sure. Would you
Yeah.
agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree, because I think that, some of the toughest decisions, you can stay in a situation and feel the pain, or you can make a decision and move out of a situation and feel the pain, which is most of the time more pain to actually make a change out of a relationship, let's say. But the reward from standing in your truth, the reward from feeling the pain anyway and doing it regardless, is so much more, like you say, the endorphins, oh my gosh, it's not as bad as I thought it would be once you've done it. So I love the fact that you described that. What about, you were talking about feelings, and I'm really curious to hear your thought on this, because I always say no one can make you feel anything unless you allow them to. So
Mm.
when you feel whatever feel emotion that comes up, what do you do with it? Do you actually sit with it and go, well, oh, this is interesting? Do you have an inner dialogue like, okay, this is interesting. What's this feeling about? Or do you just allow it to flow through without, because a lot of people go, she made me feel this way. He made me feel that way. My boss made, it's always external. Whereas I actually, and people won't like this, I don't believe in that. I believe that you feel because your triggers, and it's your shit, right? It's your stuff. It's not anybody else. It's your stuff. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it is a choice. I do think that we can be influenced by people and triggered. And I think that in those moments, it's a human response. I think it's natural. Like if I walk into my house and the person that I love is screaming at me, clearly that's going to trigger me. Clearly that's going to cause me to feel a certain type of way. But in that moment, once I get grounded and I recognize that this isn't something that I want, I can only be responsible for how I respond. So I can continue to blame this person for how they're causing me to feel, or I can take responsibility and say, hey, you know what? I don't appreciate how you're speaking to me. If this can't stop, I'm going to remove myself and I'm going to step outside. You're in choice. In life, I believe we're all in choice. I can't control how people treat me, but I can control how I respond to those people. And then what happens is once we are responsible for our outcome in life, we then teach people how to treat us. And so we have to take responsibility for how we're feeling. And yeah, and what's interesting is like being the bigger person is the most difficult lesson that I had to learn. And it's so true. But that's where the character is built. And that moment when you're responding in a loving way, even though you're justified to respond in a bitter way, that is when character is built. That is when your emotional mastery is developed. And that is when you truly are in control of your life. And that's when you can truly influence those around you. And that is exactly the path that I've taken, how I've built a 9-figure business, why I speak in front of 10,000 people, because I can influence how they're feeling in a positive way because I've strengthened that muscle doing the right thing, even though it's difficult.
Yeah, you can, and it can be difficult because sometimes there is a big difference between responding and reacting, right? Responding takes the level of pause and it's almost like be the observer rather than be in it, but actually be able to say, I'm not going to participate in this conversation and I'm going to step away. Like you said, you're being disrespectful. So I love the fact that you actually spoke through that. What I also, because you were talking about, you've built a very successful business and being a successful entrepreneur. What are because people only see the glam and the high life and the happy life but I know for me, I can only speak from my experience. It can be lonely. It can be tough. Even though I love what I do, I feel like I never work a day in the life, and I've gone through 2 burnouts, right? Because it's like I keep it going. So how do you do it? How do you stay successful and stay up emotionally, mentally? Because that's I find draining, to constantly
Sure.
stay up and, I guess, you know, on, it's almost like you got to be on 24/7. It's probably the best way to
Sure.
describe it.
Yeah, and a lot of people in life find fulfillment in achievement. They find fulfillment in the money in the bank account. They find fulfillment in the cars, the success. And what I'm going to say doesn't sound sexy or exciting, but I believe it's a path to mastery, which is finding the fulfillment and joy in nothing, finding the fulfillment and joy in sitting in a resting state. So, I meditate. I meditate an hour to 2 hours a day. I've been doing it for a little over 2 years now. I find time where I'm just sitting alone. I sit alone. I enjoy my own presence. My I enjoy myself, and it's taken a lot of work to get here, years of practice of being alone to get to a place where I find fulfillment in just being. And I think that's something that most people avoid because they can't sit in their own skin. And until you can be in love with who you are, you're never going to be in love with who you're becoming. If you don't love and like the person that's sitting here now, more money, more success isn't going to all of a sudden make you like that person, because the being who you're being happens before the action, right? Like I can be miserable and still make a ton of money. I'm still a miserable person making a ton of money. The money doesn't make me unmiserable. I'm still miserable. So like finding peace and solitude and fulfillment and nothing, in my opinion, is such an important practice to truly find peace. I could lose it all right now and I would be great. I'd be like, well, that was what was supposed to happen. I'm grateful for that. And as soon as you detach from the outcome, you have all the power. As soon as you live in the unknown, you have all the power, because now you're not tied to anything. No one has control over you. You are peaceful. Like if my girlfriend came home today, was like, I'm out of here. I'd be like, all right, I'd cry. I'd be like, damn, that sucks. But I'd be like, oh, well, I guess that's what God wanted me to have. I wouldn't scramble and run out there and get on a dating app and get on Instagram and start DMing chicks, because I'm just avoiding the feelings. I'm just avoiding what's really coming up. And so once you can be at peace with nothing, man, you truly find happiness and fulfillment in everything.
That's the trick, though, is being what you were saying, is being comfortable in your own skin. I mean, I meditate. For those that know me, I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I meditate every day. I'm very comfortable in my own skin. But then when when I move away from that, I call my morning routine and that state of being, I'm on. And I go right through to, like maybe 8 o'clock, whatever that may be. And then I go to bed and then I start all over again. For me, the practice is staying in that state. Staying in that state is what I struggle with, is to remain like, to be present. Even like as an entrepreneur, how do you stay present and not think about the future? Like, I mean, obviously you're in business, and how do we, because I know for me, it's like even being is an act, even surrendering or letting go is an act. Like to not do anything is not in my nature. And I see this with entrepreneurs. If you're projecting on, well, what's going to be happening for the next 12 months, and How do you do that? How do you personally do that where you can be in the present moment and still work towards your future or towards your programs or your projects, or because I know you've got an upcoming live event too. Like, how do you remain in the present moment but still work for the future?
Sure. And I think people talk about this like work-life balance. I don't think there's such a thing. I think it's about like integration, right? It's like work-life integration and it's a practice, right? So, everything is energy and we only have a certain amount of energy to disperse on a daily basis. And what I have found, which is one of the human conditions, is that the human mind compartmentalizes, right? We generalize, delete, distort information. Well, that is your automatic response. So you might as well utilize it. So I utilize it. So I detach from certain situations at certain times. So when it's time to focus on planning, I kick into that gear and I'm like, all right, let's build future planning. When it's time to rest and sit still, I turn it on and go to rest and sit still. When it's time to socialize with people that I need to socialize with, I turn it on. And so it's really just a practice and to really give the energy and the attention that's needed to be effective and efficient in each one of those categories. And it's just like conserving your energy. It's conserving your space. It's like you have a tank of gas. You can only travel 300 miles with your car. Well, be effective with those 300 miles. Don't waste time driving around the neighborhood looking for something that doesn't serve you. And that's what a lot of people do. They're running to the bars, they're gambling, they're doing all these different things that are burning their gas, and then they get to a place where they need the gas. They're like, I don't got no more energy, and then they're pissed and they're upset. Well, you just burned a lot of energy and fuel that you didn't need to, and so it's really just mastering how much fuel you spend using it in that context. And that's just happened over time, right? Like I've gotten to a place where doing seminars and events have really allowed me to build a practice to to develop and prepare when it's time to develop and prepare. And when it's not time to develop and prepare, I'm in the present moment doing the thing that I need to do now. Like here with you, like I'm not thinking about anything else. I'm thinking about how I can be present with you and feel the feelings and the experience of being present with you. As soon as we're done with this, I'm probably going to hit the bed and just hang out because the first time we met, I was taking a nap.
I know it's true. When we first met, for those that probably don't know, when Ryan and I first met, he'd just come out of a meditation, was lying in bed. So today, jokingly, I said, "Oh, you're looking different because you're actually sitting up." But that is so cool that you can do that. And I think that I'm very much in the present moment. By the way, when I asked that question, it was more so that when I do something, I am in the present moment doing. But then how do I like the way you break it down into, like, when you're planning, when you're having a break, you're breaking. I love that. So thank you for sharing that. Talking about events, you've got one upcoming. I'd love to hear for those that, because we have people from all over the world, actually quite a lot in the US. What is your event about?
So it is all about mastering your inner world. Day one's mastering your inner world. Day two is learning how to teach other people how to master their inner world. And so I believe leadership comes from within, right? Once you can lead yourself and you can lead yourself to healing, to transformation, to change, then you can show other people how to do the same thing. And it's interesting when I look back on my life and I think about like all the different things that have got me here, like everything was pivotal to teach me the lessons that I've learned. And it's crazy because there's a lot of parallels and a lot of overlaps and a lot of teachings and a lot of philosophies and a lot of thought leaders in the world today. But there's definitely a lot of similarities. One of the things that was beneficial for me in a 12-step program was in the 12th step, it reads, and the practice is having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to the next, sick and suffering. And so that's a practice for me. That's an automatic, and I believe that's like at the core of leadership. It's like you can't teach somebody how to lead themselves if you can't lead yourself. So it starts within. So in summary, that's what it is. And I teach people performance psychology. I teach people how to perform at a higher level while maintaining peace and happiness and joy and fulfillment in the thing that they're doing. I teach people how to become more valuable and I teach people how to perform at a higher level so that they can truly have a competitive advantage in life. Because if you're really teaching somebody how to master their emotional state, master their thoughts, then they're in control of their choices. And when you're in control of your choices, watch out, you are creating a life that is beyond your wildest dreams, because two things are happening. Either life is happening to you or you're creating your life. And so I teach people how to be the creator of their life so that they can be in charge of what's really going on for them.
I love that. I'm right there with you. I believe we have a choice. We can be either the victim or the creator, and because we're creating all the time, 100% of all the
Sure.
time. But then it's then the how do we sit with that? Like, are we actually, what meaning are we giving to the things that happen? You know, like a lot of people will say when things happen in their life, they're not taking it. There's a big piece of accountability, right? They're not taking accountability that I created this in some way, shape, or form. Just the other day, a friend of mine had their credit card compromised, right? And I said, what question did you ask to receive this kind of event to take place in your life? And he's like, what do you mean? I didn't want my credit card compromised. And then he sat with it. And then the next day he goes, I know what I asked to receive this. And so we always, and this is the thing, I always say, be careful what you ask for, because we're always going to get it. Always going to get it. It's whether we want to accept that we've asked that question.
Sure.
One thing you said that I've never heard of, performance psychology. What is that?
Well, I mean, it's a Ryan Zofay creation, and so I've built a framework. See, the mind, we talked about a little bit about it earlier. The mind generalizes, deletes, and distorts information, and so we have 1.2 billion bits of information coming into our minds on a daily basis. And so, utilizing our human, our the human the human side of us, we can compartmentalize and we can decide what we want to bring in as real or not. And so, you know, the study of psychology is how the mind thinks, acts, and feels, right? And so when I could teach people how to control their thoughts, ultimately controls their actions, ultimately controls how they feel, they have an advantage in that room or in that environment. So, like, I come home and my wife is having a bad day and she's slamming the doors around the house and she's pissed and the house is a mess and the kids are screaming. In that moment, if I can master my thoughts, I can go over to her and say, "Hey, babe, slow down." I can be present with her and I can meet her needs. I can allow myself to control my actions because I controlled my thoughts. And then immediately the feeling that we both are feeling in that moment is safety, is support, is presence. And now I'm controlling the narrative of that environment. And so performance psychology for me is just teaching people how to master their emotional state, master their thoughts, and master their actions. Because at the end of the day, an action creates our feelings. It creates an experience, which gives us the feelings. And so our thoughts and what we do create the state of our being. So when your thoughts and your actions aligned, it creates who you're being in the world. And so when you can have those congruent, you are mastering psychology. You're mastering your human condition.
I love that. I've never heard of that before, because I think it just similar to, I always say the behavior is not the person. So if you
Sure.
react to the behavior, you're actually adding fuel to the fire, but the actual behavior itself is what they're thinking and feeling. So it's really about having a conversation to really find out what are they thinking and feeling, rather than you reacting and seeing and reacting to the external, to the behavior, which is not really who they are. So I love that.
Yeah, I mean, and just in basic, like, layman's term, like, don't take things personal. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, it's not you're not that important, number one, and number two, it's not about you. So, once you recognize that and you have some compassion for the human condition, you no longer allow people to affect you. It still happens sometimes, but for the most part, not taking things personal is such a powerful tool, to implement and to live by.
Well, it's never about you. It's always about them, right? And I even say, like, jokingly, like, when I say it's actually not about you, it's about me. This is how I'm feeling. And they go, it is about me. No, I'm like, no, absolutely, it's about me. So it's funny because people quite often say it's not about you, it's about me. But it's actually, there's a real truth to that when you say that it's not about you, it's about me. What I wanted to say, I remember of an experiment where you were talking about mindset, because I can't remember who did the research. You might remember, but they were talking about mindset. We can be either pessimistic or optimistic in mindset. And I think what you were saying too is that we get bombarded by a million bits of information per second every day, but then it depends on what mindset we have to what. So let's say we capture, I think it was Bruce Lipton that said this, 126 bits per second, but it depends on our mindset. It depends on what we pick up on. And the research, and I hope I get this right, I think it was like 4 weddings and a funeral. And they had people go into the room and they had it split. So there was 50% of them were pessimistic and 50% were optimistic. And when they came out of the room and they were interviewing each individual, those who were optimistic only spoke about the weddings, and then those that were pessimistic only spoke about the funeral. So mindset has a big piece. So when you're talking about performance psychology, how do we, because I know there's some people that are just naturally pessimistic. They naturally, and they thrive on it. They thrive on the doom and gloom. And how do you make that shift into not feeding that? Like for me, for example, I don't watch the news. I don't read the news. I'm very conscious of what I feed my mind. And because I want to, it's like for my body, I'm consciously aware what I feed my body, because I'm consciously aware, this is my temple, this is my vessel. I do that with my mind. So how do you, for those people out there that are those pessimistic, and you're talking about the performance psychology, how do you shift that mindset from negative to positive?
Sure. And so past perceived voids create future perceived values. And so, from what I've found in all the work that I've done, I think I've done close to 10,000 hours of experiential processes in course rooms. It all dates back to some void that happened at those early formative years. And so, those formative years, we don't have the ability to make sense of things. We're just feeling, we're feeling sensations and we're feeling emotions. And if you have a parent who works a lot, you're going to experience a void of maybe I'm not good enough, maybe I'm not important, maybe she doesn't have enough time for me, maybe they don't love me the same, maybe I have a brother or a sister and it seems like my brother gets a little bit more attention than I do. All of a sudden, that is stored into your nervous system. That is developing a belief based on sensations and feelings. And so then you get a little older and you're in middle school, and all of a sudden you want to date, and you go up to little Timmy, and little Timmy's like, "Ew, I don't want to date you. You're ugly." Now all of a sudden that fear or that trigger just reaffirmed that feeling of not good enough, and then immediately it just compounds, and then you get older and you're like, "I have a fear of speaking on stage." No, you don't. You just didn't get the attention that you needed as a child. So your brain, your automatic nervous system is saying that's unsafe, that's scary. So be pessimistic about this because you're never going to be successful. You're never going to get your needs met. And that may be the opposite for Timmy because Timmy got the attention. But then Timmy's problem may be completely different because Timmy's perspective of that environment is different. And so it's all based on your perspective, based on your experience of the situation. You can interview two kids that grew up in the same household. They're going to tell you two completely different experiences. And so for me, it's bringing them back to where the original void started. And once they can express those feelings and start to make sense of why they're feeling the way that they're feeling, all of a sudden, pessimism, optimism, positive, negative, forgiveness, all that stuff is symptoms to the original core issue of just having self compassion and self love. Once you're connected at a whole place, you feel like a whole human being, means your thoughts and your feelings are aligned. Now all of a sudden you can be in choice of how you're choosing to look at something that's pessimistic or optimistic. And so it's a process that I take people through, but I just kind of gave you the science behind it. And once they experience this, they're like, holy shit, they feel this weight lifted, and then they recognize that they're in charge from that point. But the feeling has to happen, the void has to be addressed. And that's what everybody's running from, is everybody's running from that void. And to just break it all down and simplify it, we all have a protection. Either we're trying to protect ourselves unconsciously, and that could be behind pessimism, that could be behind optimism, that could be behind negative or positive. Our unconscious mind is doing its job to keep you safe. And it's through a protection. So once you break through the protection and you get to the vulnerability, you're able to identify the void, because the void that you're running from is the feeling. And so once you feel the feeling, all of a sudden we can address the void. And then you're like, oh shit, I don't want to feel that way. Why don't you want to feel that way? If you're saying you don't want to feel something, then you're saying that you're not human. If you're saying you don't like that part of you, then you're saying that you're not God's creation. If you're saying that you don't want to deal with that, then you're just essentially saying that you don't want to be a whole person. And so this is all what I teach through experiential, and this is performance psychology, because once somebody breaks through this, oh man, talk about power.
I love that. I just had an insight myself because I was like, I mean, obviously everyone's experienced their own level of abandonment as a child, but even for public
Sure.
speaking, I had to do a lot of training for public speaking, Ryan. I don't know if you did or you just naturally did it once you
Of
had your
course.
breakthrough, because I know, but I never related it to abandonment. Because I had a fear of speaking in public for a long time, but I thought it was all to do, and I got bullied at school because I was born in France, came to Australia at a very young age, 7. Of course, couldn't speak the language, so I got bullied. But I didn't make the connection until now that the whole fear of public speaking was abandonment, or, the whole void thing that you speak about, which is really cool. But I agree with you because we talk about psychological archetypes, which is all Carl Jung's work. And the
Sure. Yeah.
psychological archetypes, every archetype, whatever you call it, whether it's an inner critic, a saboteur, an imposter syndrome, pessimist, whatever that may be, there is a purpose, there is a reason, there's a benefit why it's playing out, and a secondary gain. So I love the way that you described it in a such much more easier, digestible way. So thank you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and it's so interesting because you just talked about the abandonment. I mean, once you go to like the core issue of the void, you start to identify what the heck's happening all at the symptom level. At the surface level, you're able to start to see. So like somebody's like, I'm not making the money that I want to make. It has nothing to do with your inability to make money. It has nothing to do with your inability to have healthy relationships. You know how to do that. You're in a relationship. You're making money. You're just not making as much money as you want to make. You're in a relationship. It's just not the way you think you want the relationship to look. And so once you can identify the void, once you can teach them how to connect to that part of them, all of a sudden they feel more powerful and they see life through a completely different lens. And that's all it is. The difference between me and a billionaire is a billionaire sees something different and he's able to produce value in the world at a much different level because he sees something. But what you're seeing has everything to do with what's going on internal. Our reality, what we're seeing in life, is really what's going on internally. It has nothing to do with what you're seeing externally. And so once you can identify where those voids are coming from, you start to see life through a completely different lens.
And that would change everything, wouldn't it? Like, so obviously, when you're doing all that deep work and the inner work, that is, I mean, because obviously your external world is a reflection of your internal world. So if you're not being successful in a relationship, in, business, money, whatever that may be, it doesn't matter how many courses you do, you'll never, I've just got level up, you'll never level up, right? Without the doing the deep work. Because I know people, entrepreneurs that are invested millions of dollars doing course after course after course to hit their millions, and they still can't, but it's that deep work that you speak about.
Yeah, I mean, listen, and at the end of the day, like there's results in life, right? And I think a lot of people, a lot of coaches teach results, getting outcomes, but it doesn't change the human experience. And I think that's where people fall short because they think that the money is going to change the way that they feel, and they don't understand the correlation and the connection to it. And I had to learn the hard way because I thought being successful and being rich was going to change how I feel. It didn't work. It actually it caused more pain because the things that I did, I weren't proud of. And so think about it. Like if you're in a relationship and you can't stop cheating, well, you're cheating because you think that the new person is going to make you feel good. You think that that person is going to validate how you're feeling, with really you're just running from the void. And so it has nothing to do with who you're with. It has everything to do with you being with yourself. And once you could be okay with yourself, who you're with doesn't matter. Like because you're attracting completion. You're attracting wholeness. So you're not sitting here evaluating or assessing what this person is or isn't. And it's the same thing with money. You feel complete and whole. So you're like, all right, I can make these decisions, and these decisions are going to produce this level of result. But you're feeling connected. But if you're chasing the result to try to get the income to make you feel better, you're never going to be fulfilled. You're never going to be happy.
Yeah, that's the other way around, is it? I mean, I've seen people, I always say hello to everybody, and I've done lots of travel. And I remember speaking to somebody that was cleaning their toilets, and that was their whole life, and they loved it, and they were so happy. And it just, I remember that day was like, it's not about money. It's about how it makes you feel. What you're doing is how you makes you feel. And it doesn't matter. It's the rewards internally that you receive from doing the very act of whatever it is for you. But yet we have been conditioned to chase money, because money does make the world go round, right? Does make things a little bit easier. But we've been conditioned to chase. We've been conditioned to work really hard to get as much money as possible so we can get that house, we can get the car, we can get whatever.
And all that's important. I mean, I love it. I wouldn't do anything different. Like my pursuit to be successful is there. I want to make more money. I think it's fun, but it's my relationship with the money. People, you hear people say the money is the root of all evil. No, the love of money is the root of all evil. I think money is a tool, and once you understand it as a tool and you detach from the emotional experience of it, you are able to make bigger decisions because you're not scared to risk. I'm not scared to lose because my relationship with money is completely different today. But I had to go through that pain and I had to go through that experience to know that. And most people don't understand that their relationship with money is the direct reason why they're not making the money that they want to make, because they're scared to death. And our number one survival, our number one means of survival is money, because that's how we feed ourselves. And so people don't understand that at an unconscious level, the relationship you're having with money is actually why you're making the amount of money that you're making. It's pretty cool because I take people through this really cool process in the events where they partner with somebody, and the first prompt is, when I have money, I feel blank. And so they say it like 10 times. They write it down. When I have money, I feel blank. Powerful. When I have money, I feel blank. I feel excited. When I have money, I feel, all the different things. And then I switch it and say, okay, when I don't have money, I feel blank. And then they start to recognize that if they have money or not is going to determine how they're feeling. And then I show them that the person you're being has to happen before the money. How you're having a relationship with the money comes before if you make the money. So if not having money causes you to feel insecure, causes you to feel angry, causes you to feel worthless, that's why you're not making the money, because you feel those feelings before the actions. And that's what I teach is I teach you, what is your intention? Who are you being before you take action? And that is the lesson. And most people don't understand that. And once you can teach them that, they recognize that they have to feel good in order to make the money. You have to be the millionaire before the money is made. And that's what most people don't understand.
Yeah, and it's hard because I say that too, like act as if, right? Act as if you've got $1 million, and act as if, but then there's all those, it goes back to those conditionings at a very young age. If you had, like I saw, left a country, I don't know how my parents did it, they didn't even speak English, but they came to another country, had to work really hard. And I had this belief that you had to work really hard to make money. And then if you've seen your parents in fight over money, unconsciously you attach arguments with money. And so as much as you want to make money, there's this unconscious resistance to it. And you'll always sabotage yourself before you make that big break, because unconsciously as a child, you'll remember, well, my parents fought, it caused a lot of angst, they separated. Yeah. So when you said relationship with money, I was curious, and I love the way that you described it. I was curious as what was the actual relationship, because even like I always say that for me, even when you get a bill, I always say, I'm so grateful that I can pay this bill. It doesn't matter how big they are. I'm always so grateful, but really feel it with gratitude. And I treat money with such respect, with such respect. For me, before I go spend it, I say, do I really need this or do I want this? Like I really, really analyze everything that I do. I have this respect. So relationship starts with, you're talking about the emotion that's attached to the money itself, whether it's good or bad. And the bad emotion, I didn't even like to label it good or bad, is what comes first. So then you have to shift to the positive emotion for you to attract the money to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's all based on like how the belief or the story you're telling about the situation is controlling the decisions that you make. So if you're limiting yourself because of the relationship that you have with money, then clearly that's what's stopping you from making the money. And you mentioned, your childhood and all of that stuff that you've been through actually influences the choices and the decisions that you make today around money and the relationship that you have with money. It's so true. And like growing up for me, my mom used me to get money for her to pay for her drugs, to pay for her lifestyle. And so my relationship with money was that, like, I needed to make a lot of money and to give people money around me so that they like me, they love me. And so I built a business, but I had to go through a ton of work to understand what was going on. And then I used it for good. Because what's interesting, and you talked about, Carl Jung and these different archetypes, there's a purpose. There's a reason why this is happening the way it's happening. Find out what that superpower is and leave the part that you don't like. Have homage with that part, honor that part, love that part of you, integrate that part into you. But like, hey, we don't need you anymore. Like, you don't need to do that anymore to get the outcome that you're looking for. And once you can recognize those parts of you, you change the way you have relationships because you're addressing that void. And once you address that void, you're feeling more like a whole person, and you don't need to do the thing that you thought you needed to do to get the thing that you wanted, which a lot of people are like the statement people pleasing. Well, I mean, you can break that down and see what it really means. But there was definitely a time in my life when I was a people pleaser, and there's still a part of Ryan that pleases people, but I do it in a way where I'm aware of it, and I'm at peace with what I'm doing, and I'm on the table with it. I think that's the more important piece, is like really being conscious and aware of what the heck you're up to. And I think when you can do that, you have integrity with what's going on, then your thoughts and your feelings are aligned, because you always want to trust the tongue in somebody's shoe versus the tongue in somebody's mouth. And so if somebody is saying one thing but doing something different, you can clearly see what they're up to.
You have the best analogies, can I just say? You've got the best analogies. I'm conscious of your time. I did want to say one thing though too, with the people pleasing. I know exactly, like me too. I'm a recovered people pleaser, and I still do it. But then I ask myself what drives that behavior, and a lot of the times it's the way that I connect. It's the way that I feel like I belong. It's the way that I feel validated. Yeah, so I love the
It's so
fact that you
true.
can even ask yourself those questions and go, okay, so do I need to do that? Once you understand what drives a behavior, you can then start being more, well, do I really want to do that? And that goes back to boundaries, right? It's something I'm still working through. Like boundaries is, you too, with
I mean,
boundaries?
I just think it's funny because it's just like you hear like you just like hear um what is it? I'm trying to think of the word, but like I don't know. I have a like I can go deeper with you in regards to like boundaries, right? It's because it's like we're putting boundaries in place because are we saying that we can't control what's coming into our world, or are we saying that we're putting boundaries to protect people from coming in? It's for a much deeper conversation, but yeah, I
Oh,
mean, in
yeah.
grand scheme of things, I'm definitely still
I see
practicing
where you're
healthy
going with
boundaries.
that. When you were laughing, I know me. It's more so from my time and space and honoring my time and space, not
Sure.
not letting people in. I let everyone in. That's the thing. But it's more so because I've experienced two burnouts, right? And I know that was the biggest part of that for me was people pleasing. I want to help everybody. I want to be available for everybody at the cost of me, right? So that's what I meant by boundaries.
Right.
More so like, do I
Yeah.
have the space and energy for it?
Sure. Sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I guess where I was what I was really laughing for is because there was a time when it was perceived that I had no boundaries at all.
And did what was the repercussions of you having no boundaries?
I mean, and I guess that's why I'm laughing, because it's like all those experiences were necessary to get me here, and so it's like I'm just grateful for them, and I'm just laughing because it's just like I'm like, oh man, like, ooh, I did that, like, oh man, that was a mess, oh man, I made a mess. And I guess where I got was, it's not about what you did, it's about what you do next. And so I think that's the key, is like what's the next decision you're going to make. And because my unconscious pattern is a mess. Like when I think about everything that I've had to do to get here, it's been a mess. I've made a ton of messes. And so my next, like the rest of my life is all about trying to clean up those messes.
Yeah, I know. But don't you have boundaries now? Do you not have situations you say, look, I won't do this interview or I won't collaborate with this person, like just for your own, like honoring your vessel, your time, your energy, or you don't look at that as a boundary?
I do. I guess I just wrestle with the word boundary. You know,
Mm.
I don't love that word because it's like very limiting and it demonstrates somebody that's not in control. So it's like you're using something external to change how you're feeling internally. So that's where like I like wrestle with it but I understand the concept of it and I practice it. It's just like words that create resistance or limitations on me. I just like wrestle because I don't want to be confined because it's the known. And so I always do my best to stay in the unknown. And so if anything that I'm using externally is controlling how I'm feeling internally, I struggle with it. And so like the word boundary would insinuate that I'm not strong enough or powerful enough to be in control of this situation at this time. And so that's all it is. But that's what I was saying. There's a much deeper conversation we could
I
have around
love
it.
that. I've loved that because I've never heard of that, but I can see it completely because it is. It's
Yeah.
restricting. The word itself is very limiting. It's like a wall. So I completely feel it's
But
never heard of it
but
before.
ready but we live by rules. Why are rules in place? To protect us, right? So like when you think of it, like if you're a rule breaker, you're actually developing a superpower because if you're living by rules, and that means you're not living your life. You're just listening to what the rules are and who's making up the rules and who's deciding if those rules are real or not. And so when you think of it, it's rules are in place to keep us alive and protect us. And so once you start to understand human psychology, certain words kind of rub you the wrong way. And that was the best thing that happened to me growing up with parents that didn't have any rules for me is that I have no limitations. Like I do what I want when I want. And now through like moral character, I do what's in the best interest of everybody that's around me. So I've gotten to a place where I'm able to serve and to make an impact in the world without living by rules that are placed on me or that I place on myself. So that's the whole thing about the boundary stuff.
Wow, I've just had a insight right now. No wonder I struggle with boundaries because freedom is,
Of
and I'm very
course.
much
Right.
of service, and I struggle with boundaries because I want to be there
Right.
and help people, but freedom is my number one value, my number one core values. Trust, or what? It's truth, honesty, love, and freedom. They're my top
But
values.
Catherine, think about this, right? Like the reason why you teach essentially performance psychology, you teach entrepreneurs how to build and scale is because you don't like living by rules. You do not like boundaries. You want to do what you want when you want. That's why you teach people the very thing that you teach because there's a level of freedom behind it. And when you can be alone long enough and you're not in nothing external is controlling how you're feeling, but you're generating the feeling that you want to feel, you are powerful. And then you go out in the world and create from that place. Oh my God, watch out. So that's all. I just like, but I understand the concept of boundaries and I teach it, like different people are at different places in life. And sometimes they need rules and they need to be spoon fed spoon fed information. And then once they develop and evolve, then you can kind of like expand and go deeper on what that really meant. And I think that's kind of what we just did is dive into like rules and boundaries a little bit deeper.
I just got God bumps, goosebumps over goosebumps. That's amazing. Thank you, Ryan. I am conscious of your time. We're going to have to get you back on the show. We're going to have to unpack this
For
even more.
sure.
So, because now I've just had like I said, that's why I struggle with boundaries because freedom is one of my top values. So, Ryan, definitely going to get you back on the show. The way that we would love to wrap up the show is to share 3 shiny golden nuggets with our audience. So, what would be those top 3 shiny golden nuggets that you would like to leave for our audience today?
So I think the first one is really adopting a mindset that you are more powerful than you think you are. And I believe that needs to be understood that it is a choice to believe that. You can either believe you're not powerful or you can believe you are powerful. And depending on which one you choose to believe is going to determine what you're experiencing in life. And so if you're about to step into a meeting and you're like, I'm not that powerful, then the outcome of that meeting is not going to be as good as you want it to. But as soon as you get to a place of like, I am powerful, the outcome of that meeting alone is going to change what happens. And so I think that would be the first golden nugget. The second golden nugget I would say is where you place your attention is where you place your energy. And so really being mindful of what you're focused on. Like where are you spending your time? Where are you choosing to focus on? Because if you're focusing on what you cannot control, you're going to have a much different experience if you focus on what you can control. And once I understood that there's things that I can't control in this life, and the more I can focus on what I can control, then I'm going to get a much different outcome in my life. And I would say the third nugget that I think is the most important nugget is to really learn how to develop self compassion and love for yourself. And when the feelings of hatred, bitterness, resentments creep up, it's not anything external, it's everything internal that you're avoiding that needs to be addressed. And so if something pops up and you want to run from it, that's the work. That's where the work needs to be done. That's what needs to be explored. And once you can explore that, the more of the hatred of yourself, the more compassion and love you have. And then all the symptoms that you're struggling with in life will be resolved, because at the core of everything, it's unconditional love. Just like God unconditionally loved us, He created us to be unique, to be special. And once you recognize that you are the only you and you are the unique version of you because there's nobody else like you, that means God created you perfectly perfect the way you are. And once you understand that, then nothing is happening by mistake. Everything is happening just the way it was supposed to. And so unconditional love is the gateway to that.
I love all three, Ryan. You're spectacular. I highly recommend everyone that's tuning in to go and check out Ryan. We'll have everything in the show notes. Your event's coming up on is it 11th or 12th of October?
Yeah, October 11th and 12th.
Yeah, so we'll have that in the show notes. I highly recommend everyone go and check out Ryan. You're amazing. Absolutely amazing. I
Thank
can't
you.
wait to unpack some of this even more. So thank you
Yeah,
for
thank you.
sharing
I
your
appreciate
time,
you.
your energy. I appreciate you and your wisdom, and
God
thanks for
bless you,
the
Catherine.
insights. God bless you too.
Thank you. God bless. Have a great day.
Thank you.